One day, he finds a girl at his wife's grave who calls her her mother. The past reveals unexpected connections, and the heart, closed by years of pain, begins to beat anew. He was not looking for a second family, but fate gave him a choice that he cannot turn away from. The story of how a chance meeting can become the beginning of a life full of light and love. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss new stories. The raindrops fell slowly and steadily on the marble, as if the sky itself was measuring the time remaining in this autumn silence. Lucas Velasco stood before the tombstone, clutching a bouquet of white lilies to his chest. He did not like these flowers. They were cold, almost indifferent, but Elena adored them. She said that there was honesty in them. And now, 6 years after her death, he brought them, because despite everything, he still listened to her. "I'm late again," he muttered, looking at the leaf prints stuck to the stone slab. "Sorry." He didn't expect an answer. He never did. Talking to the dead wasn't about answers. It was about trying not to go crazy. He straightened up, adjusted the collar of his coat, and was about to leave when he noticed something strange. On the slab, right at the base of the tombstone, someone was sleeping, curled up. A small body, wrapped in a thin jacket, soaking wet. A girl, about 6 years old. Lucas froze. "Hey!" he called quietly. The child did not move. He approached cautiously and crouched down, trying not to scare her. "Are you okay?" The girl stirred. She opened her eyes, pale, tired. She blinked several times, as if trying to discern who was in front of her. Then she sat up and, without removing her palm from the stone, whispered, Your mom?" Lucas froze, his heart pounding painfully in his chest. No, I'm not," he sighed. "Are you alone?" "I was with my mother. She left, but I knew she was here. I came. I just fell asleep." "What is your name?" "Sophia," the girl answered, and pressing her palm to the stone, she added, "Mom said it would be warm here, but it's not." "Who is your mother, Sophia?" Elena Velasco." He seemed to have fallen into himself. His head began to ring. He looked closely at the girl. She was like everyone and no one at the same time. Clean, with big eyes and a cheek to which wet leaves were stuck. He swallowed. He paused, then pulled himself together. "Elena was my wife." "Then, are you Lucas? How do you know my name?" Sophia looked down. Then she pulled a crumpled, faded sheet of paper from her pocket. She handed it to him. It was a children's postcard. Hand-drawn. A house, a dog, a tree, and the words in jagged letters. Mom Elena, Dad Lucas. Sophia. In the corner, a small handprint, made with paint. "She came to my house," the girl said quietly. "To a house with many children. She played with me. She brought a doll, and she said that she would take it away soon. She said that I would have a dad who builds houses and a room with a yellow ceiling. You. Is that you?" It took Lucas a moment to find his voice. "She wanted to adopt you?" Sophia nodded. "And then she disappeared. But I still knew she would come back, and if not her, then you." He suddenly felt like he was standing on the edge of something that would change his life. Right here in the damp October air, with his boots soaking wet and a child who shouldn't have been here. "Sophia, do you know how you got here?" "On foot. I remember the road. I remembered how we rode then. And then I just walked. For a long time. You're cold. Are you hungry?" She nodded. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her. She didn't resist. Her arms were thin as twigs. When she hugged him for warmth, he felt something inside him, long petrified, tremble. He didn't know what to do, but he knew he couldn't leave her here. I'll take you to the shelter, Sophia. Okay? I don't want to. It's cold there, and no one talks like Mom. I won't leave you, I promise. But we need you to be safe. They rode in the car in silence. Sophia looked out the window. Sometimes she asked questions. Do you have a house? Eat. Is there a kitchen there? Yes, and a fireplace. Do you miss your mother? Every day. Me too. Upon entering the shelter, the guard was surprised to see Lucas, but even more surprised to see Sophia in the back seat. Is this the same girl? He asked. Do you know her? Of course, she ran away 2 days ago. We searched for her, but not very hard. We have a lot of those. Lucas got out of the car abruptly. Like these? I mean, children, with character. She's stubborn. She kept saying that they would take her away. No one believed her. Lucas picked up Sophia and she snuggled up to him. I don't want to go back. He walked inside with her, and in the hall they were met by a middle-aged woman with a stern expression on her face. Sophia, are you out of your mind? Where have you been? I was looking for my mother. We told you she wouldn't come. You made this all up. Lucas stood between them. She didn't make it up. My wife really was going to adopt her. The woman frowned. You... Lucas Velasco? Yes. She softened. A little. That explains a lot. Come into my office. We need to talk. Sophia didn't want to let go of his hand, but he leaned over. I'll be back soon, okay? She nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on him, like an anchor. The shelter's office smelled of paper and old wood. The woman introduced herself, Marisol Trevino, the manager. We do remember Mrs. Elena, she said, opening the folder. She came several times. She was kind, communicated with Sophia often, said she would file the documents, but tragedy. No one else showed up, and the case was closed. Why didn't you tell me? She acted alone. You are not mentioned anywhere on the papers. Perhaps she did not want to disturb. Or maybe she did not have time. He fell silent. Can I get access to the case? Formally, no, but I see that you care. I'll write a request. But there's something else. Sophia believed for too long that she would be taken away. She held on to that thought. If you disappear again, it will finish her off. Lucas exhaled slowly. I don't know who she is to me, but today, she is all that remains of Elena. Marisol looked closely. Then you better find out, before it's too late. When he came out, Sophia was still sitting on the bench. When she saw him, she stood up as if nothing had changed. Are we going home? He knelt down in front of her. Not today, Sophia, but I'll be back, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. And again, until we figure out what's next. She looked straight into the eyes. Do you promise? I promise. Then I'll wait. Just don't forget me, okay? He hugged her, not answering, because he knew that now it would be impossible to forget her. Are you here again, Señor Velasco? Marisol Trevino's voice sounded more surprised than irritated. I promised, Lucas replied, nodding and walking into the hall. Sophia hasn't woken up yet. She's been in the playroom for an hour now. She doesn't want to have breakfast. She's waiting for you. And you? Me? Marisol raised an eyebrow. I'm waiting for you to tell me why you really come here every day. I'm not sure I know, Lucas admitted, adding, a little more quietly, but for the first time, I don't have the desire to stop. He found Sophia sitting on the floor among scattered pencils. She was drawing, with flowers, crookedly but with persistence. There were other drawings nearby, a house, a room, a large tree, a figure with a mustache, and probably himself. She raised her head and immediately jumped up. I thought you weren't coming. I promised. Will you show me what you draw? This is our garden. She pointed at the drawing. There will be a lemon tree and a dog. Elena promised that we would have a dog. Do you think we can handle the dog? Can you cook? No. Well, then the dog is more important. He laughed. Sophia came closer and, without hesitation, took his hand. Will you come tomorrow? Yes. And the day after tomorrow? Certainly. And on Saturday? Sophia, I'm sorry. It's just, if you don't come one of these days, I'll start thinking again that it was a dream. Then I'll just keep you from falling asleep, he smiled. That day, they sat for almost 2 hours in the shelter library. Lucas read her a book about animals, and Sophia interrupted almost every sentence with questions. Do kangaroos really carry their babies in their pockets? Yes, it's called a bag. Would you like to have a bag for people? I think the back seat of the car is enough for me. Ha! And if I ask, will you put me there? And if I ask, will you stop asking questions? Never. Marisol looked into the room and said quietly, A social worker is looking for you. From an agency, says we need to discuss guardianship. Now? Lucas frowned. I didn't make a request. Apparently someone did it for you. A woman with dark hair, pulled back into a ponytail, and a piercing gaze was waiting for him in the reception area. She did not stand up, but gestured for him to sit down. Lucas Velasco, architect, 49 years old, widower, no children. Address, business, biography? She nodded. All impressive. You must be Andrea Melchor. Exactly. And I have just one question for you. Why? For what? Yes. Why would a grown, wealthy, independent man who had lived in voluntary seclusion for 6 years suddenly decide to come to the shelter every day to talk to a child he had never met before? Because I feel like I have to. It's not enough. Adoption is not an act of atonement. It's a responsibility. It's not saving the girl so I can heal myself. I don't save. I listen. I'm just answering a call that's too loud to ignore. And yet, are you really ready to become a father? He was silent. For a long time. Then he said, I'm not sure, but I know that I've already become someone to her. And I don't want to disappear like everyone else. Andrea stood up. I watched her. Sophia is smart, but fragile. She pretends not to be afraid, but she is always afraid. If you disappear, she won't survive a second time. Then I won't disappear. You already told me this. The next day, Sophia met him with a serious look. I heard you talking to that aunt. She doesn't believe you? She's testing me. Are you afraid of her? No. I'm only afraid of losing you. And I'm afraid that when you become my dad, you will forget how it was before. I won't forget. I remember every conversation we had. Even about the kangaroo. And about the lemon tree? Especially. She looked at him with such seriousness that he fell silent. Then suddenly she said, You know, I don't think you're like those dads I've seen on TV. They're loud. They have cars and ties. And what am I like? You are quiet, like a stone in water. But if you touch it, it is warm. Is this a compliment? The best one. He looked away. Sometimes a child's words hurt more than the most pressing questions from adults. One day she asked, Will you build me a house? I'm already building it, right now, in my head. Will there be a window with a view of the sky? Will. And I will be able to draw on the walls? Only on one. Why? Because there will be books on the others. Then okay. She fell asleep on his shoulder, and he sat there, motionless, holding back the tears that came suddenly. Not from pain. From something else. from the fact that in that quiet breath on his shoulder was everything he had lost, and everything he could now gain. "Do you know what I dream about?" Sophia asked, swinging her legs off the bench in the shelter's backyard. "I dream that I'm sitting on a huge staircase, and you're standing below, and you say, 'Jump, I'll catch you.' But I can't, because I'm afraid. But you don't leave." "I really didn't leave," Lucas answered quietly, sitting down next to her. "I'm here." "In your dreams, you always wear a hat. You don't wear a hat. Do you think we should start? It's worth a try. Maybe then I'll be able to jump." He chuckled as she concentrated on drawing on her palm with a blue pen. "What is this?" "The stairs. And this is you." "Why is my head round?" "Because you're not square." "Well, you can't argue with that." She giggled and suddenly pressed her shoulder against him. "Can I stay in your house for one day?" "Do you think you're ready?" "I've been ready for a long time. It's you, adults, who still can't decide." Andrea showed up at the shelter like a storm on a clear day. She found Lucas reading aloud to Sophia. "I'm interrupting your private session," she said, clutching the folder in her hands. "I need to talk to you." Lucas nodded. Sophia frowned. "She'll say again that you're not a dad." "No, Sophia. I'll just say that everything is legal." Andrea turned to her. "And you still draw stairs?" "Yes." "And are you still checking who can keep their word?" Andrea smiled slightly, but quickly hid the expression. In the hallway, she laid out papers in front of Lucas. "The situation is this. You have filed an application. The check is underway. You have no criminal record. You have a stable income, a good reputation. The house is suitable, but there is a nuance." "Which?" "Emotional closeness." "Sorry?" "You haven't had a single formal interview with a psychologist. Not a single joint adaptation session. You just started coming. Because it was right. It feels like yes. According to the rules, no. If you want to adopt Sophia, you have to go through the whole process. Not as a friend, as a candidate for father. How long will it take? 2 or 3 months. Maybe more. She won't be able to stand it. And you? I will wait. But she looks at the door every day, as if tomorrow depends on it." "Because it depends," Andrea said. "Because you're already everything to her." He ran his hand over his face. Then he looked up. "Okay, make appointments. I'll go through everything. But only on one condition." "Which one?" "She needs to know that this is not a game, that I will not leave, no matter the outcome." The first interview took place in the psychologist's office. Sophia sat on her knees, squinting in the light. "How do you feel around Lucas?" the specialist asked. "Safe and delicious. He always has candy in his pocket." "And what do you feel when he leaves?" "I miss you, but I'm not afraid, because I know he'll come back." "Why are you so sure?" Sophia looked at Lucas. "Because he's like that street lamp, always on, even when no one's looking." He looked down, feeling his throat tighten. Another day they were offered to spend time outside the shelter, a walk in the park. Sophia held his fingers and chatted nonstop. "If you were a tree, you would be a chestnut. They are strong. And you?" "Me? I would be a rosehip. Small, but with a surprise." "And is this a surprise?" "Thorns, but only for those who offend." He laughed. "So the thorns don't threaten me? Not yet." She caught the butterfly and brought it to his hand. "See, she's not afraid, because she knows you won't touch her. You often talk about fear. Are you afraid?" "I'm afraid that one day I'll wake up and everything will disappear." "It won't go away, Sophia, I promise." One day she found him in the orphanage garden, sitting with his head buried in an envelope. "What is this?" "Letter." "From whom?" "From Elena." "Khan?" He held it out. She opened it and read aloud. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. But know this. I believe you'll find someone who will awaken the light in you again. Her name is Sophia. She's like a firefly. Small, stubborn, and maybe she's the best thing I'll leave you in this world." Sophia was silent. Then, very quietly, she whispered, "So she really chose me?" "She didn't just choose. She loved you. A lot. And you?" He looked into her eyes. "I'm learning. Every day. And I feel like I'm already far away. And I'm learning to believe. And you are my first task." And they sat on the bench under the autumn trees, in a silence that contained more words than any books could contain. "Have you ever lost something that seemed like the only thing that was real to you?" Sophia asked, sitting on the windowsill and looking at the gray sky outside the orphanage window. "Yes," Lucas answered quietly. "I did." "And then, did you find it?" "Not right away, but yes, sometimes what you lose comes back to you, in a different form." "And if he doesn't come back?" "Then you learn to live with an empty space, but that doesn't mean you forget." She paused, leaning her forehead against the glass. "And I thought you would say, 'I will not lose you.'" He came closer and put his hand on her shoulder. "I will not lose you, Sophia, under no circumstances. Then remember, if suddenly I am not there, look for me in the house with the lemon tree. I will be waiting there." He squeezed her fingers, very quietly. "We will build this house together." The next day, Lucas arrived at the shelter and encountered a confused Marisol in the hallway. "Where is Sophia?" he asked immediately. She was transferred." "What do you mean they transferred?" "It happened at the agency level. Not on my initiative. A new shelter. Supposedly. Adaptation conditions. A technical solution. Who gave permission?" "Andrea. I was against it myself, but she insisted. She said it would be better for everyone." "Lucas, listen. This doesn't mean the end. It's just a new stage." He was silent. But inside, everything was collapsing. And in this silence, there was anger. An hour later, he was standing in Andrea's office. "How could you?" His voice was low, calm, but almost icy. "This is the agency's decision, on your initiative, because that's what it's prescribed. We need to see how the child reacts to the sudden change. Check what her attachment is like." "Her affection?" He took a step forward. "She drew our house every day. She knew my words by heart. And you just plucked her out like she was a thing. She's not a thing. But she's not your daughter either, not yet." "No. But I am already her father. Maybe not on paper, but in my heart. The heart is not evidence in court." "Then let it be. I'm filing a lawsuit for official registration, right today." Andrea nodded slowly. "That's what I was expecting. Because if you don't give up after that, then you're really ready. You exposed her to fear, just to test her. I gave you a chance to show who you are, and maybe I showed you myself." He left without saying goodbye. That same evening, he found the address of the new shelter. It was a different building, gray, gloomy, with small windows. The guard didn't want to let him in for a long time. "She's not visiting," he snapped. "I'm not a visitor. I'm the man she prays for every night. I have instructions. And I have a heart. Let me through, or I'll come from the other side." The guard was confused, but he opened it anyway. Sophia sat alone in the corner of the playroom, without pencils, without books, just looking at the floor. He came up, not in a hurry. "Hello, Sophia." She slowly raised her eyes, without emotion. Then, with a jerk, she jumped up and rushed towards him. "I thought you wouldn't come again." "I will always come." "You were there for a long time." "I was looking. The road was difficult. And I was waiting. I was waiting all the time." He sat down and pressed her to himself. "You know I submitted the documents, the real ones, with signatures. It will take time, but now everything is real. What if I'm not allowed to be with you? Then we'll think of something else. The main thing is that we're together, even if the whole world is against it. Are you afraid? Only one thing, to lose you again. Then hold on tighter. She did not let go of his hand all evening, and even when she was asked to return to the bedroom, she whispered, "Don't go. Sit here until I fall asleep." "Okay, I'll stay." "Do you promise?" "I promise." And he sat, in the semi-darkness, listening to her breathing, understanding that this was home. Not a building, not an address, not a room, but a voice, a whisper, a hand that holds yours, even in sleep. "Do you think the lemon tree has grown yet?" Sophia asked, looking at the cloud-patterned wallpaper in her new room. "We just planted him a week ago," Lucas chuckled, setting the box of books down on the floor. "He needs time." "What if it doesn't grow?" "Then we'll plant something new. And wait again. It's like with people. Sometimes it takes a long time for something to take root. What if I've already let you in?" He turned around. She was standing in the center of the room, barefoot, with a soft blanket over her shoulders. "What do you mean?" "The roots. Here." Sophia tapped her palm on the floor. "I'm not waiting anymore. I'm already here." "Then I have only one thing left to do." "What?" "Build walls around your house." "And the roof?" "It will be made of glass, so that the stars can be seen." "What if it rains?" "Then I'll cover you with a blanket. This one." He nodded at the one on her shoulders. "You won't get wet." Sophia walked up to the box of books. "Are these all yours?" "Yes." "Will I have my own?" "Of course. With a shelf, and with a sign, 'Fantasy lives here.' And if someone wants to read my books, let him ask permission first. And if he is polite, I will allow it." They both laughed. Their laughter sounded light, like a window opening in the middle of winter. 3 months had passed since the court had made its final decision. Now it was official. Signatures, documents, seals. Lucas Velasco had become Sophia's adoptive father. But it sounded different in their conversations. "Are you mine forever now?" she asked when they returned home after the meeting. "Even if you become an astronaut and fly to the moon, I will find a way to be near you." "What if I forget what our house looks like?" "I'll draw it for you, on your palm, so that you'll always remember." "What if I forget what your shirt smells like?" "Then I'll wear it every day until you remember again." She nodded. "Good. Then I definitely won't forget." Every night they had their little rituals, a cup of cocoa, a bedtime story, one question from her, one answer from him. "Dad, did you have dreams when you were little?" "There were. I wanted to build bridges, to connect the banks. And now? Now I want to build rooms, so that people would wait in them." "And my room, is it about waiting?" "No. It's about the fact that the wait is over." One day, at the end of spring, they went to the cemetery. For the first time, Sophia asked herself, "I want to thank her," she said, as Lucas drove. "For what?" "For choosing me. For finding you." It was quiet at Elena's grave. The wind was stirring the flowers in the neighboring plots. Sophia knelt down and placed a drawing in front of the tombstone. It showed her Lucas and a tree with yellow fruit. "Hello," she said quietly. "I'm home now. Thank you for sending it to me. He's not perfect. He doesn't cook. He sometimes forgets his keys. But he listens. And he's mine. And I'm his." Lucas stood a little to the side, not interfering, but when Sophia stood up, he took her hand. "Shall we go?" "Wait." She looked at the sky. "One more thing," and she added in a whisper, "I will try to grow up the way you would like to see me. I promise." In the evening, they were sitting on the terrace. Sophia was drawing with chalk on wooden boards. Lucas was reading. Suddenly, she raised her head. Have you ever thought that all this is an accident? Sometimes, but more often, that it is a gift. Am I a gift? The most unexpected. Do you know that I now believe in miracles? Why? Because you once said that you don't know how to be a dad, and now you're the best. He froze. Do you know why you are the best daughter? Why? Because even when it seemed to me that everything inside me had died, you made me breathe. Does this mean we saved each other? I think yes. Then I'll draw this. Us. And I'll write, the daughter who saved the silence. Will that do? It will do. And they both fell silent. But this silence was no longer empty. It was home.